Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Please join me in Gasho. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namon Loves, Namon Loves, Namon Loves. Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate your taking the time to listen to the Dharma on this beautiful Sunday morning. And today, I actually wanted to talk about the concept of happiness. And not really just like your happiness or my happiness, but really like what is happiness, especially in the context of Jodo Shinshu. I mean, happiness is kind of like changed in its meaning from different eras in time throughout all of history. In the most American sense, happiness is something that we pursue, right? The pursuit of life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, right? And ultimately, it's something that is central to our understanding of the world today. Like, we are supposed to go after the things that we want, that we think will make us happy. We are supposed to kind of like work towards these dreams, these goals, these visions. But at the same time, that doesn't quite perfectly fit with the way that Jodo Shinshu operates, right? Like, Jodo Shinshu has a very different view of happiness. We're not really supposed to like prioritize like our own egocentric desires and needs all the time. But at the same time, happiness is a real core part of what it means to live a Jodo Shinshu life. And so that's kind of what I want to get at today as we think about what does happiness mean in the context of Jodo Shinshu. Well, the best way that I can describe it was put to me in Dharma Breeze by Nobuo Haneda. And Sensei Haneda actually says that the best way to think about this is, in Jodo Shinshu, happiness, true happiness, is really just forgetting about your own happiness. So, in other words, to be happy, you just have to not really worry about being happy. This seems, like a lot of Buddhist teachings, a little bit like confusing, right? It seems like it's going both directions at once. But the truth of the matter is that it's actually quite beautiful and pretty straightforward if you think about it. So let me pose this. If we think about the things in life that we believe we need to be happy, we're usually focusing on like certain core things that I feel like always pop up. Like, you're looking at the great job. You're looking at a little bit more money. You're looking at really cool things, cool stuff, like nicer objects in our lives. And we're also sort of thinking about things like relationships and love and that kind of stuff, right? Well, according to a lot of psychological studies, those things don't exactly bring us the sense of happiness that we necessarily think that they're going to do. And a lot of this has to do with the idea of expectations versus reality. So what we typically find, for example, is that our psychological perspective in many ways and the pursuits of our lives don't quite gel with our actual feelings. And more than that, we have a really hard time interpreting what's going to make us happy in life. So, for example, there's a bunch of psychological studies that show this. One of them is called the Lumirsky Study, which kind of falls around economic situations. And it tries to determine like how happy you are based off the amount of money that you make. And it kind of makes sense, right? You have more money, you're going to be a little bit more happy. But that's not exactly what the study ended up proving. So what happened is the study proceeded to track the changes of income for people over a long period of time, like many, many, many years. And it also tracked the level of happiness that those people experienced on a scale of 1 to 10 of how happy they were during those different periods of their life. So, for example, a person could graduate from college and make like a $30,000, and over a period of time start making a larger sum of money. And during that period of time, they would report consistently about what level of happiness they're experiencing, 1 to 10. And the findings were really interesting. What they found was that like all over the map, people were kind of like showing that they were more happy the more money that they were making, but only up to a certain point. So it's kind of like that. They were like, we're getting more happy the more money that we're making, and then all of a sudden, it kind of plateaus a little bit. And they found that the number that people were that kind of plateaued at in terms of their overall level of happiness, which is about like 7.5 or so, give or take, was at about $75,000. And at about that point in time, people that were making about that much money had all their needs met, had the ability to like not worry about all the different situations that could arise that could like cause them a lot of trouble and cause them financial chaos. And at that point in time felt very stable. And that's about the level where they didn't really get a lot more happy if they made more money or a lot less happy if they made a little less money than that. It kind of balanced out. But the interesting thing about it was that like, even though they were reporting that they were about that the same happiness level at about the $75,000 as the person that was making about $200,000, what they found was that at every level, people always said they needed more than what they were currently getting. So for example, if you were at a $30,000 earning mark, you would automatically say, I need $50,000 to be happy. But if you were at the $75,000 mark, you would immediately say that you needed $100,000 to be happy. And if you were at the $100,000 mark, those people started saying, I need $250,000 to be happy. And so in a weird way, it did not matter what level of happiness they were actually at. They kept thinking to themselves that I need more to be happy. Because it's one of those things where you're always looking at the next step. You're always projecting into the future. You're always planning on contingencies and opportunities. And the grass is always greener on the other side, and you can be happier. We should pursue more happiness. And the truth of the matter is that it actually leveled off after a period of time. There's a lot of studies like this. We find them in terms of like people putting prioritization in terms of love, like a relationship will make me truly, truly happy, or a job, like having the perfect job, like working at Google or like something like that will make me truly happy, or like getting a new Ferrari, or getting like the perfect grade on a test. But the truth of the matter is that that's not really what happens. The truth of the matter is that like actually with a lot of these different psychological tests, they discover that people are really bad at predicting what will make them happy. And that even if you achieve a really good situation in life and you're constantly looking at it as fear of losing it or chasing after something that you just don't have yet, people are bad at understanding what will make them happy. And the best way we can think about this is our attachment to idealized views of the future, like what my life is supposed to look like as opposed to what it is now. What my neighbor's life is like, what my cousin's life is like, what my friend's life is like is so much better. That's what it should be. It's not really realistic. And it's not really going to bring us any kind of like fulfillment, right? And it's important to note that suffering, that this is ultimately a form of suffering. This constant comparison to other people and this constant pursuit of these ideals that in a lot of ways aren't really reality. They're just up here in how we view the world as if like we're constantly trying to measure ourselves against something that just isn't really there in the first place, right? So it's kind of interesting, right, that we are constantly doing this. And Sensei Haneda says, we frequently say things in our lives like, if I could just get into a nice college, if I could just get employed by a nice company, if I could get married to a nice person, if I had a nice family, if I had a nice retirement, if I could be born in a nice world after death. How many ifs have we had in our pasts? And how many ifs do we have now? And how many ifs are we going to have in our future? We have an endless continuation of ifs. And I do not think that our true happiness can be found in relying upon the endless continuation of ifs. This is dreaming and nothing more. And if you think about this, this is truly what suffering is, right? Living a life that is truly never settled and moving from one thing to the other, suffering from one idyllic hope that doesn't come true over and over and over again, and never, ever settling on the truth of the moment, never being present and really thinking about what that means in this moment. And you know, like, there's a lot of like evidence to suggest that this isn't just a Buddhist teaching at play here, but this is kind of like how human psychology works, right? A study was published by Perspectives in Psychological Science that found that studied a bunch of participants in self-help groups. Self-help groups that were designed to make them feel happier, right? And to pursue their goals and to make them pursue different things that they felt were going to make them happy. And the study basically followed around all these individuals, and the study's co-author and member of the psychological department at the faculty of Yale University, Ms. June Gruber, who was conducting this study, found, according to the article, I quote, "When you're doing this with the motivation or expectation that these things are going to make you happy, this actually, by its very nature, leads to disappointment and decreased happiness." In other words, people put such a priority on happiness that, well, quite frankly, they were let down. They could never live up to the idyllic version of themselves that they wanted to achieve. And what Miss Jane Gruber eventually comes to the conclusion is that the best way to actually increase your happiness is to stop worrying about being happy and instead divert your energy to nurturing the social bonds that you already have with people. And if there's one thing that you're going to focus on that. And the rest of it, it just sort of comes as it is. To me, this fits perfectly with what Sensei Haneda says about happiness. To truly be happy, you have to forget about your own happiness. You have to not worry about it. And instead, you spend your time with friends, focusing instead on experiences and relationships and the time you have with others. Because I bet you that if you really think about it, the happiest moments of your life were not spent like doing something in which you were just throwing cash around or something like that. And I'm pretty sure it wasn't surrounded with people adoring you, but the happiest moments of your life were probably spent with other people. You probably weren't alone. And the happiest moments of your life were probably an experience, not an item. And it probably wasn't something where you were dreaming about the future, but you were just in the moment. And that's what happiness is in Jodo Shinshu. It's making mochi with your friends and family. It's putting together that Hanamida. It's, being in that Sangha group and saying the Buddha's name and not worrying about a thing because you're in that moment, living a Jodo Shinshu life with a bunch of other people that have that same kind of spirit within them. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this week's Dharma message. And, it's tough out there, but try not to worry so much about your own happiness and just sort of do what you can in the moment. And we're all in this together. Please join me in Gasho. Namo Amidabutsu, Namo Amidabutsu, Namo Amidabutsu, Namam Dops, Namam Dops, Namam Dops.